Welcome into the 615 Sessions podcast on this beautiful Friday in Middle Tennessee. It's always a beautiful day when we can have the queen herself, Teresa Walker of the Associated Press. She bails me out on a regular basis. She did so again this afternoon, of which we are always grateful. T, thank you for stopping by.
Well, you're welcome. I'm going to have to put this on your tab, the lengthy tab that you have with me, but that's okay.
Well, I'll try not to walk out on that particular tab because God knows it's been running over the course of the last 8 years. But we have OTAs. Teresa and I have been out there on the practice field. I've been at not as much at practice, but more for press conferences just because of the radio show logistics and all those different things. But we do have some pretty significant quotes from the week from the day that was open and available to us that I'd like to get through with Teresa. Podcast always presented by Zen Sports. The promo code ATOZTN. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, and get up to $100 on your no danger first wager, courtesy of Zen Sports. So, Teresa, the way that the media availability is working now for people who may not know how the logistics have changed. Used to be at this time of year, we just grab guys coming off the field and speak to them after practice. And, we would choose at our discretion basically who we're going to go after. And there may be a big scrum for them. There may not be. That multiple people may want them, whatever. This is different. Right now, we're getting a collection of players. I think on Wednesday, it was 5 or 6 on the field. And then we got 2 players to speak with at the podium. And you submit, to the PR staff who you want to speak to on any given day. I didn't personally request Chig Okonkwo, though Chig had some of the most interesting comments out of the media availability. And before we get into it, I guess what was your main takeaway from all the people that we talked to in OTAs before we hone in on specifically what Chig had to say?
Well, every time there's a new regime that comes in, there's always a tweak in things, right? When Vrabel came in, chairs were added. We sat down instead of he didn't want us up on top of him, and so chairs were added. Now we're doing things a little differently. They're asking, and I'm getting some flashbacks to Jerry DiNardo's tenure at Vanderbilt, when not only did they ask us to say which players we wanted, but also what topics are you going to talk about. That lasted barely a day, but they are kind of, trying to control it a little bit more. And I guess I can see the idea, give guys a heads up. Hey, media is going to be talking to you tomorrow. But it is interesting. Before Chig talked, Arden Key was talking about, correcting mistakes on the field before they left the field. And that was kind of interesting. And then we get up there and we hear Chig. And again, different coaches, there's always a breath of fresh air whenever there's a new coach that comes in. And Mike Vrabel had been here 6 years. I mean, the longest tenure for a coach since Jeff Fisher. Mm-hmm. So, there's going to be some changes. But for a team that has lost 18 of its last 24 games, and there's been, there's a lot of the people who, Chig's one of those guys. A year ago, remember what he was telling us, that, Vrabel ignored him as a rookie. Didn't know that he knew his name as a rookie. And then his second year, it's like they were best buddies. And now we hear him telling us there's this freedom, this, what that vibe. And it is definitely, I think we all kind of sat up and perked our ears, and it's like, what, it makes you want to track it down a little bit more. Absolutely, for sure. And try to figure out what was going on here.
Yeah. And, listen, you and I have worked with Mike Vrabel for longer than Chig Okonkwo has. Like, we understand Mike's personality. We understand the dynamic, both in front of the podium and when things are, a little more casual or whatever the case may be. And that personality and that style is not for everybody. But if it starts to impact the overall success of the group, intentionally or not, then, of course, changes have to be made. And while that's not the only reason that Mike Vrabel's no longer the coach of the Tennessee Titans at this point, and Brian Callahan it is significant that many players are comfortable kind of voicing it. So you mentioned Arden Key, and we, Bert, if you could grab that Arden Key clip. I don't know if you have it handy, because Arden had some interesting comments as well. But since we're referencing the Chig comments, let's first hear from Chig Okonkwo.
The vibes are immaculate. Where can you tell that? Where does that maybe show up on the practice field or maybe in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like guys are just more relaxed, now with our building. I feel like guys come in and they're not as tense, not as stressed out. And it just, allow people to be a lot more free in the locker room. I mean, we always were free in the locker room, but there's a lot more free on the field. I think we're going to see a lot of that this year.
Do you have an example of that freedom? Just like how is that manifesting itself?
Example of it? I mean, just, coming in and I feel like just coming in and being yourself, not feeling like you need to, minimize yourself, what you're doing, just coming in and fully being you.
What do you attribute that more relaxed environment or atmosphere to?
It's just the different cultures right now. We're seeing a new culture. The way we do things, it's a lot more on us, on the players, to get going. So I feel like having ownership of that has been a big thing to help us, be a lot more free.
Okay, so that is Chig Okonkwo speaking with assembled media on Wednesday at practice. And, I think it's interesting, Teresa, because certainly things were done a certain kind of way here for the past 6 years, and now they're being done in a different style. But the takeaway that I have is, well, of course the vibes are high because nothing has gone wrong for them yet. The team that Vrabel was trying to manage and preside over was, I mean, in a 2-year tailspin, for lack of a better term. And understandably, the environment would be tense. Now, did Mike contribute to that? Certainly. But it's all gravy at St. Thomas Sports Park right now after free agency, after the draft and all of it, because they haven't had anything hit them in the mouth. Nobody's been lost for the season. No games have been lost. Nobody's got swept by the Colts yet or anything like that. And so, of course, there would be different vibes around the building.
Absolutely. And you hit it on the head. Let's not forget the last couple of years, this was a team that was looking, for cap cushion, right? To even try to make some moves and doing this, that, and the other, and dealing with injury after injury after injury, loss after loss. And this team, they were one of the biggest spenders of the offseason. They signed Calvin Ridley. They trade for L'Jarius Sneed. They bring in Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, it's like, they've added Lloyd Cushenberry. I mean, they draft J.C. Latham. They've done a lot to fix perceived holes on the roster, both offensively and on the defensive side. They're, and guys with big checks feel good. And you have good vibes. And yes, when you're getting to know good new coaches, you're on your best foot when you got new bosses, right?
Yep.
But the part that jumped out at me maybe the most, the being more free on the field, that almost feels like, I think about how many guys have told us in the last 2 weeks, we're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. We're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. And so a tight end who was second on the team in receptions last year. I mean, Chig Okonkwo is a guy who ideally in a Bill Callahan offense, Brian, geez. This is why
Tajay Spears, Tajay Sharp. I'm doing it all, Teresa. It's brutal.
I know. That's why I'm trying to, I don't like to call guys by nicknames, but I'm trying to call Callie, if only to differentiate him from his father. But Callie is, going to be having this passing offense. Well, Chig Okonkwo, there's only one ball. You can only stay on the field for so long. So ideally, Chig Okonkwo is probably not going to see the ball as much. But this offense ideally should be producing more because God knows it can't get much, much worse. So, that I think also feeds into it. The idea that they're going to be able to go out on the field and make plays. And that this is not just going to be a hand it to Derek offense and throw a little bit around the edges. So, you play to the weapons you've got. They had Derrick Henry. You ran the ball a lot. Now there's Hopkins and Ridley and Boyd and Burks and Chig. I mean, you can go on. And they're making it clear they're throwing the ball. And I'm sorry, it's not Arena League, it's the NFL. But players, especially guys who catch the ball, love it when they're throwing the ball. And I think that also attributes to the idea of the fresh breath of air. And what you pointed out, they have not lost a game yet. They've not had somebody ruled out for the season, although we won't get an injury report, let me remind you, until the first Wednesday after Labor Day. But everything, it's all smiles, cookies, and puppy dogs and rainbows over at St. Thomas Sports Park right now. And that was, but yes, when he said that about being more free, we all sat up like dogs waiting for a treat, because it's like it was so, it's like, what's next? What's next? Tell us more.
On the heels of the Arden thing, right? Which we'll go to here in just a second for context, because there's reason to believe that underperforming players would, of course, look at a coaching staff and be like, well, it's your fault that I'm underperforming or something like that. And in the case of Chig, we've seen examples of where Mike Vrabel took it upon himself to coach players harder than others when he felt like that was the tack to get the best version of the play. Jayon Brown used to talk to us about that all the time, Teresa, how Vrabel would browbeat him almost in trying to maximize the potential of a player that he thought was there. And just at a certain point, there comes a time when you can't treat everybody that same or take that same philosophical approach, because everybody's wired different. I think Chig's a good example of that. Now, Chig has plenty on his side of things to pick up the pace for as well, because you mentioned that Chig finished second on the team in receptions, but it was basically a late season surge, a last quarter of the season surge that saw Chig kind of get to that production, because the first 3 quarters of the season have been brutal. We talked about the drops and all the different things that they're, and, listen, they had a bunch of issues, so it's not just on Chig Okonkwo, but there is some onus on Chig as well. Now, the reason that Chig is a talking point is because it was preceded by Arden Key, who spoke with us at length about Denard Wilson as the starting point, but then about the differences between Denard Wilson and the previous coaching staff, including Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen.
The coaching style, what they teaching, try to do everything up to my best ability and see where I go.
I'm sorry if someone asked you about the new additions to the defense, but what are you thinking? What is the ceiling for you?
It's great. Just Denard. His track record the last 2 years. Number 1 in pass rush, sacks. Number 1 in takeaways. And every other category top 5. So he coming in, like I told him before, I've been around. And it's some defenses I've been a part of that was number 1 in pass rush, number 1 in sack, number 1 in takeover. And the D coordinator that was there, he's showing some of the same characteristics of that D coordinator that we had a great defense that year. And he coming over here, the intensity he got, the detail, and we don't move on until everything is fixed. And the detail he got and the swag that he got that he come in with every day, oh man, it's gonna be exciting.
Did you move on before some details were fixed in the past?
Hell yeah. Yes, we moved on. If we messed up, we didn't fix it. And now this year, when we mess up, we don't move on until we fix it. So yeah.
You having that kind of experience, bouncing around a little bit and seeing all the different styles and different personalities and stuff like that, how reassuring is it to know that you have Denard and you're seeing some of those traits that you like as a coach?
Very reassuring. I'm tip my hat out to him the last 2 years. I mean, he's been consistent in his work the last 2 years. Just the defense he's been part of, they did crazy, tremendous work. I remember Philly when they almost broke the sack record. Everybody was just talking, and then when we hired him, you kind of look back and remember, oh man, he was part of that. Oh man, he's in Philly. Oh man, he's with the Jets. Oh, these guys that get to the quarterback, know how to get to the quarterback, and just their style of getting to the quarterback is what fix us best.
So, Teresa, I'm going to fact check him a little bit there, because Arden Key has never been a part of a number 1 defense in sacks or takeaways. He did play in San Francisco in 2021. They had a lot of success. They were 6th, I want to say, in sacks, but he had never played for a defense that was that kind of good the way that he was referencing. I think he was talking about D'Amico Ryans, but he didn't use D'Amico Ryans' name specifically in that clip. So a little bit of edification there, but you got Arden's larger point that he felt as a veteran player that they weren't cleaning up the mistakes when they made them last year and were just moving on for the sake of moving on. Whereas this year, Denard Wilson will not allow them to move on until they get the rep correct in the way that the coach envisions it.
And that's the thing, when you're doing it on the field, some coaches like to do it in the film room, show it and say, and talk about it and point out, stop the film and say, hey, this is what you should be doing. But when you do it on the field, it helps build the muscle memory. And I think that's what, Denard Wilson is tapping into and making it clear. I mean, how many times, think back to grade school. I don't know. I had to write a lot sometimes. Teresa talks too much in class, and, write that on the sheet for 500 times. It didn't stop me from talking, but the point was made, right? With the repetition. And I think that's what he's getting to, is it's like, we're not moving on. We're getting it fixed. We're getting it fixed now, and then moving on. And it builds that base. And it's a contrast again in coaching styles. Some coaches like to do things some ways, and Denard Wilson's making it clear, we're going to fix it right here, right now. Don't make me, come back there, and we're stopping this car. We're not moving any further. And it makes you focus on what's needing to be fixed, and it's making you listen closer. And I think that helps drive home the point, in addition to building the muscle memory. And that's the thing, in the course of an NFL game, with the play clock and things like that, you have to think quick. And I think this is one of those things that will have its payoff down the road, ideally, with this coaching style by Denard Wilson.
Does that surprise you, though, that Mike, and listen, it's one player who said that about the idea that Vrabel or Bowen would just kind of gloss over something and move on, but like, we've known Mike and worked with Mike long enough to where at least that hit me as a bit of a surprising element, knowing how hyper-focused he is on the detail-oriented stuff.
Same here. And that's the thing. I wasn't even in on the scrum around Arden Key, but I was listening a little bit. And when he said that, it was kind of like, wait, what? And I was listening for the next few comments, and, Mike and his guys, they would, they moved through a practice. They practiced with a tempo and a pace, trying to replicate as much as possible on a practice field, that game tempo. And that might be part of it, because that may have been Mike's approach. The idea being that, there's some things you can't fix in a game. Right? You can look at the tablet, you can talk about it on the sidelines, but, I'm sorry, the clock's going down, and it's going to be the next quarter, the game over, and then you've got to get it fixed during the week. So, it goes back to differing coaching styles. And I think that's more of what it is, but it's the kind of comment that absolutely, when you've had a coach fired, things were looking really good a couple years ago, right? I mean, 2 straight division titles, and top of the world, Ma, to suddenly you lose 18-24. Bye-bye, don't let the door hit you. And we're all looking for the pieces in the tea leaves, trying to figure out, wait, what all went wrong? And this is one of those tea leaves that we'll pick up and chew around, but because that's what we do at this time of the year. But and we'll see. I mean, if that's the thing. If there should be enough time that you get everything installed offensively, defensively, but you do have to fix errors. The biggest thing especially in the NFL, but in all fields, don't make the same mistake twice. And at the NFL, not for long. If you make the same mistake more than once or twice, you're usually not playing. And we've seen, Mike would, set guys down when they made the same mistake a couple times, right? And talk about doghouses. There's still some guys that are still in Jeff Fisher's doghouse for mistakes that they made. So, we'll see how quickly, they can actually continue on this path. Because at a certain point, even Denard Wilson's going to get tired of somebody if they don't get it right, no matter how many times they've tried to go over and fix it on the field.
Or, which is a situation that's totally viable, is Callahan goes through the same thing that Vrabel did, which is it's tough to hire good coordinators after you keep getting them hired away. Because I think Denard Wilson is very much intent on being an NFL head coach. And I don't know how Brian Callahan's going to do as an NFL head coach. We had a representative sample size of Mike, and we'll see. Right now, they've checked all the right boxes, and which it leads to the high morale and the free agency winning the offseason, for a lack of a better term, is not actually the winning and what it takes to win a football game. So I'm a little, I don't want to say that I'm hesitant, because I like the direction that they seem to be heading, and I think they're making good decisions en route to get there. But I think that the fan base has, so many of them have this image of Vrabel was the problem. Vrabel was the problem. Now the bad guy's gone type of thing, or at least they've worked themselves into that it's ignoring the fact that you have a completely unknown commodity here in this new head coach, and maybe he's entirely successful, but the grass isn't always greener. And there are still some things that you have to monitor when adversity hits. What kind of coach will Brian Callahan be when adversity hits as the head guy? Because I've heard him talk about, Teresa, the idea that he has to change how he talks to dudes because he's speaking as a head coach now instead of a coordinator. When you bust balls as an OC versus as a head coach, it comes off a lot different to guys who directly rely upon you for the judgment of their employment. So I don't mean to cut you off, but I've already kept you longer than I told you I would, so I didn't want to prolong this unless you had another thought.
Well, I know we do tend to start talking and get talking. I'll just say this: the head coach is where the buck lands. Sorry to use that cliche a little bit there, but the fact of the matter is that's the guy, that's the scapegoat who gets, thrown out of town when things go bad. It's why they fired Mike Munchak, Ken Wisenhunt, Mike Mularkey at the end of the day, Mike Vrabel, and, Brian Callahan, he's the new flavor of the month. They won the offseason spending money. Guess what? This team won division titles when they didn't win the offseason. And Denard Wilson was at the coaching accelerator program at the NFL meetings just a week ago here in Nashville. So he is absolutely on the radar trying to get a new head coaching job. So we'll see how long this goes. But everybody is 0-0 right now. Everybody thinks Super Bowl. I'm going to finish with this. The idea that the odds that came out the other day, they're favored in one game. Oh my God. It's just another example that the national media are not looking at the fact that this is a completely remade franchise. We have no clue what Brian Callahan and these folks will do. We, with Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, we have some suspicions. We're going to have to wait and see.
Well, and just quickly to your point about that, John Glennon did post, I think it was Bet Online AG, that had the offshore lines for every one of the Titans 17 games this season. And to Teresa's point, they're only favored on May the 31st. It doesn't mean those lines will change or won't change, but on May the 31st, they are only favored in one game against the New England Patriots at home, and they don't even get the 3 points for home field. They're like a 1.5 point favorite against the Patriots, who are one of 4 teams who will be starting a rookie quarterback against that. But you know what, Teresa? I'm more with the betting odds than I'm not. I don't know they haven't proven anything to me just yet, to any of us, which is why I'm kind of like, all of this is lovely. I'm excited. I love watching Calvin Ridley at practice. I like seeing that. I think Terry made the joke. Terry McCormick made the joke the other day on Twitter that he saw more passes thrown in one OTA practice than he did 6 years of watching the last coaching staff. And all that's well and good, but they shouldn't be favored in any game, in many more than one game that they have, because I have no idea what they're going to be just yet, even though I see the vision, right? I understand the vision. We all understand the vision. The idea that they might be able to put it together or not is something that we have to wait several more months to conclude. But that's Teresa Walker, the GOAT, the Queen, the Associated Press head of the state of Tennessee at this point. What's the official title?
State sports editor for the Associated Press in Tennessee. You can also call me AP Pro Football writer, Queen for short. And no, I didn't give that to myself. It was given to me by others. But I will happily wear the crown.
That's why you're my girl, Teresa. We appreciate your time as always. Make sure you like the video if you're watching with us on YouTube on the way out the door, and we will see you next time on the 615 Sessions podcast.